Fans of great defense, I think you're in for a real treat. I've put 600 to 700 hours of work into preparing this list. This is the second take of this video. The first one was filled with hundreds of players' names and lots of boilerplate info. And it was well over an hour long, and I almost put myself to sleep when I listened to it. So I'm moving quickly through the first 31 teams, pausing on a few that perhaps need more explanation than others. To be clear, this is regular season defenses. No playoff games were taken into consideration. Some of the best defenses in history didn't make the playoffs, and therefore there's no way to rate them fairly if the playoffs were included. Defense represents about 45% of the game when you figure in the offense and the special teams. And no matter how good 45% of a team is, it's not good enough to make the playoffs. If the team's not spending as much time on the field because their offense is controlling the ball, and they have less plays to defend, and therefore they should give up less points and yards. Several adjustments had to be made because the game has changed so much over the years. So each of my categories is tempered by comparing the team's stats to the league averages for that season. It's not fair to judge the yards per play given up or the turnovers from the 1950s to those from the 2010s. On average, there are roughly twice as many turnovers in the game in the 1950s and less yards per play through the 60s and 70s, mostly because of the rule changes that came along starting in 1978. I tweaked the formula many times and went through mountains of stats and included things in my analysis that previous attempts to name a top defensive list did not, like penalty yards and the strength of the offense, and also some things that the best of these other lists did include, like strength of schedule. I knew I had it right when the distribution started to level off through time. When you just use stats, it's mostly teams from the 60s and 70s, and if you weight turnovers improperly, you get too many 50s teams. So now, mostly, what's actually being measured is how much better a defense was than all of their peers in any given season. So, I feel the result is undoubtedly the most comprehensive and most accurate research that has ever been done that led to a top defenses of all time list. Now, unlike all the other lists, I didn't take just 1 year as a representative of a defensive unit that was outstanding year after year. I felt that if a team had more than one season that earned a spot on this list, then they should have that honor and be recognized. As a result, there are several defensive units that placed multiple teams on the list, with the 1970s version of the Steel Curtain leading the way, having 4 teams on this list. Enough about the process and teasing the results. It's time to reveal the top 51 single-season defenses of all time. At number 51, the 1977 Atlanta Falcons. I didn't make it a top 50 list because I wanted to mention the Falcons. They gave up the least points per game of any team in the last 70 years, but in 1977, the defenses were way ahead of the offenses in points per, and the points per game was the lowest ever. That's why before the 1978 season, many rule changes were made that completely changed the game. Another stat I used that no one else did to create a top defenses list was the points given up by the offense and special teams. There's no reason the defense should be penalized by a pick six or a kickoff return for a touchdown. When that's considered, these Falcons dropped to number 3 on the list of points per game, with the top 2 spots on this list going to the teams that passed them. By the way, the Falcons finished at 7-7, the worst record on this list, and proving my point that a phenomenal defense alone cannot win games. At number 50, the 1968 Dallas Cowboys Doomsday Defense. This team allowed just 2 rushing touchdowns all year. At number 49, 1992 New Orleans Saints. This team had all 4 linebackers make the Pro Bowl. At number 48, the 1985 Chicago Bears. That's right, the 85 Bears end up at number 48. That ends up on the top of most of those lists. But they just didn't have the single season statistics to justify that. The Monsters of Midway had without a doubt the best 3-game single season playoff defense of all time. They put up some outstanding numbers to get this far, but what surprised me when I looked at this team is how much of the game was controlled by their offense. The defense didn't have to spend that much time on the field, but they had to put up some great numbers to get this far. Now, I'm going to take a moment to give a little shout out to Buddy Ryan. Buddy Ryan, as I'm going through all these teams, his name showed up over and over again. He has a lot to do, a lot of influence on this list. And by the way, this list represents the top 3% of defenses all time. At number 47, the 1975 Los Angeles Rams, the Fearsome Foursome. At number 46 is the 2014 Seattle Seahawks, the Legion of Boom. At number 45, the 2011 Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, this is the second edition of the Steel Curtain, or the Steel Curtain 2.0. Now, as I mentioned before, the 1.0 version of the Steel Curtain put 4 teams on this list, and the 2.0 version of the Steelers put 3 teams on this list. At number 44, the 1973 Pittsburgh Steelers. And number 43, the 1974 Pittsburgh Steelers. At number 42 is the 1973 Oakland Raiders. Number 41, 1981 Philadelphia Eagles. At number 40, the 1958 Baltimore Colts. At number 39, the 2018 Chicago Bears from just 2 years ago. At number 38, the 1996 Green Bay Packers. At number 37, the 1973 Miami Dolphins. 1 year removed from the only undefeated team, these guys were known as the no-name defense. Both the 72 and 73 Dolphins defenses were helped by perhaps the best ball control offense that's ever existed. Now, 72 Dolphins had slightly better numbers, but they played the weakest schedule of any team by far considered for this list. Their opponents had winning percentage in the 370 range, and the next worst strength of schedule is in the 440 range. It's just they played a phenomenally weak schedule. At number 36, the 2005 Chicago Bears. Number 35, the 2008 Tennessee Titans. Number 34 is the 1995 Kansas City Chiefs. Number 33, the 2003 New England Patriots. And number 32, the Titans are back, the 2000 Titans. And number 31, the 2008 Baltimore Ravens, and you'll see more of them. And number 30, the 1991 Philadelphia Eagles. And number 29, the Fearsome Foursome is back, 1968 Los Angeles Rams. At number 28, more of the Baltimore Ravens, the 2006 Ravens. At number 27, more of those 2.0 Steelers at the 2010 version. Number 26, the Monsters of the Midway are back, the 1986 Chicago Bears. At number 25, the 2015 Denver Broncos. At number 24, the 1954 Cleveland Browns. Almost said Indians. The Cleveland Browns had a great defense all through the 50s, and we're going to see more of them. At number 23, the 1963 Green Bay Packers. We will see more of them as well. At number 22, the 1971 Baltimore Colts. We will see more of them as well, or maybe we've already seen the 68 version. At number 21, the 1967 Green Bay Packers. I measured all my categories to the 1,000th of a point, and so far the scores earned have all been relatively close to the team below them. The difference between number 21 and number 20 is the first of 3 gaps in the level of greatness, and appropriately enough, I think, these top teams represent roughly the top 1% of all NFL defenses of all time. And also appropriately, I will spend a little more time on each of these 20 defenses.